I'm Katthe, and I'm joining from Wadsworth, Illinois. If you would just open up, put in the chat who you are and where you're joining from as you come in, so we can see each other. I know Robyn is my co-host today.
I'm Robyn Harvey. I'm out in DeKalb, Illinois, about 60 miles west of Chicago.
Awesome. So this is Be Strong Families webinar series, staying strong and positive for ourselves and our children. We've been going at it since like March 2020, daily in English and Spanish. And we're delighted to have you all here. So if you would just open up the chat and click the drop-down menu to the second one that says everyone, and just, hi, Sandra, hi, Rosine, hi, Tammy. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, let's go to the next slide because it's 12 o'clock and we only have a half an hour. And this month we are teasing or giving people little tastes of the workshops and the training that we provide that you can register for, or that you can have us come provide in your community. And this one that is this week is relationship-based practice and making effective referrals. And I know this is Wednesday, and you've heard Monday and Tuesday as well, but I am really excited about this workshop because I feel like a lot of us who work with families or work at family resource centers or provide family support services are committed to, a lot of what we do is get families, assist families with getting connected to the services and the resources that they need. Aho, yes, everyone? So that's part of what we do. And there's an opportunity in how we do this to really shift the helping paradigm and do even more of what we're trying to do in terms of the empowering or the assisting families with understanding that the power and brilliance and wisdom that they have, which is what parent cafes are about, and other things that Be Strong Families does are about, is about not to take anything away from helpers, because we all need help sometimes, but how do we, it's like the teach a person to fish versus going and providing the meal for them. So that's what this, in general terms, that's what this workshop is all about, the relationship-based practice and making effective referrals. And today we're gonna talk about referrals and building tools and networks. And I'm delighted to be here with our director of training and technical assistance, and Robyn Harvey, and as my co-host, and if she's going to try to get a word in edgewise.
That's okay. I've done a lot of the webinars for this topic, so I'm really excited to be co-hosting with you, Katthe, and hearing your vision and your desire for this to be spreading everywhere. Super excited to be here. I'll go through the ways to engage and give your voice a chance to rest. So for those of you who come regularly, you know how to engage, but for those of you who this might be your first time, first of all, I'd like to welcome you and hope that we see you here again. If you aren't talking, put your phone on mute. When you're ready to comment, you can raise your hand using the icon, and Andrew will unmute you. Then you'll need to unmute yourself so you can be heard. A lot of times there's a lot of people with a lot of great things to say. Please be patient with us. We're going to get to you as quickly as possible. For those of you who we can't get to with your hand raised, please feel free to use the chat to put your voice into the room. It's so, so important. When you do that, make sure that you use the down caret on the chat so the little box says everyone or all panelists and attendees, depending on which Zoom version you have. Awesome, thank you. Go ahead to the next one, Andrew. Our agreements for today are going to be speak from your own experience using I statements, using the golden rule, which is treating everybody, other people, the way you want to be treated. Bring your full presence. Give yourself a half an hour gift today by just, kicking back and absorbing. And then if you need a minute, take a minute. If you look at the chat, you see people typing, I agree, I agree, I agree. We would like to invite you to agree to follow these agreements as well. And I'll take just a breath while you guys continue to do that. And I take my minute to do it too.
Perfect. Okay, let's move. Thank you, Robyn.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to start in kind of a weird place, but it's an idiosyncratic place specific to me, which was at the beginning of my career in the family support field. I worked for an organization called Family Resource Coalition that does not exist anymore. And it was a national family support organization. And one of the things we did was the Best Practices Project. And the Best Practices Project kind of put together for the field of family support the principles and premises that existed at that time. And I still think they're kind of like in the water and underneath. I mean, since then we move forward, we have the protective factors, we have the National Family Support Network, of networks. So we have a lot of family support has grown and expanded, but I still think this is like the root, the foundation. And I'm pulling 4 of the 9 principles of family support practice, because I'm thinking that if you're not familiar with the principles themselves, you can resonate with this as a way of working with families. So the first principle is staff and families work together in relationships based on equality and respect. So the third one is that families are resources to their own members, to other families, to programs, and to communities. So this is kind of like limbing out that relationships, like relationship-based practice and making effective referrals, relationships are the heart of family support practice. And that it's not looked at, equality and respect are the foundation of the relationships. That goes both ways. Staff respecting and understanding the human dignity and equality of the people that they are there to serve, and the people who are participants in programs treating each other with equality and respect, and treating the staff with equality and respect. But that equality is like the 1996 version of equity, because equity moves us towards equality. Mm-hmm. So then it's really kind of like back in the 90s, like to really pull out that families are not just passive recipients of help and services. They are resources to themselves, to other families, to the programs that are serving them, and to the communities, so that they are a natural resource. Families who are receiving services are a resource for themselves, for other families, for programs or communities. And that the programs, part of what family support programs do is contribute to community building intentionally, and by mobilizing formal and informal resources. So again, practitioners working with families, not for families, but with families, to mobilize formal and informal resources. So there was always, from the beginning of the family support practice articulation of what family support was, this understanding that family members are active agents of change, and that it's a reciprocal and participatory partnership that moves, that transforms. So that's a little bit of a little lecture. We'll go to the questions after one more slide, because we want to do this question-based. But with that, I think family support comes out of a long tradition of mutual aid and assistance. You were right, Andrew. I was moving. So the question I have for you is, like, when I say mutual aid or assistance, what are we talking about? Or in your own experience, what does mutual aid or assistance as part of a family support program or a family strengthening program, what does that mean, or what could that mean? You can put it in the chat, because the chat's the primary way that people engage, or you can raise your hand and say something. But what is mutual aid or assistance? Adrian says providing resources for the client. how is, okay, so I know that's part of what, and sometimes it goes the other way too. Yeah, well, that would be one definition of mutual aid, where in the dyad, in the relationship between a service provider and the client, they were helping each other. But we're really talking about mutual aid and assistance. We're talking about the people who are receiving services, receiving them from, or help or assistance, receiving it from each other as much as they're receiving it from a worker. So that's what I'm saying, is it's not like the worker is the one providing everything. It's like the worker is catalyzing mutual aid and assistance. So you can see, you do this. I'm sure some of you who work in family support programs, you do this. What you do this by, you watch it emerge. You watch people come to an event and get to know each other and start, being backup for each other in terms of like childcare, or some of you, like you have a clothing bank or a food bank, and people from the community that are receiving services also donate to this. Yeah, so I feel as I learn from interest. Okay, Tammy says, I feel as though I learn from all the families I work with. They help inform me as I inform them, and we share resources. Yes, and that's like a home visitor or somebody who's working one-on-one with families. You do have that, mutual relationship that informs. And then both the staff and family work together to create an outcome. Isn't the goal of cafes? Yes, Adrienne, that's one of the goals of cafes, but it's not the only place that mutual aid and assistance happens. And I did a number of webinars about, probably close to a year ago, on mutual aid and assistance. It has a long history of mutual aid societies, and you can look this up. Basically, there were certain categories of people that were excluded from social services. Like in Louisiana, if you were African American, you weren't eligible to receive services. This is back in the 1890s, the early 1900s. You weren't eligible to receive services from the formal service system. And so mutual aid societies grew up. There were like 100 of them at the turn of the century in Louisiana, in New Orleans. And you can see like the Chinese Mutual Aid Association, there's the Jewish Children and Family Services, like immigrant groups to this country who were kind of excluded, immigrant groups, and I would also say the formerly enslaved, who weren't exactly immigrants, had to help each other because the powers that be weren't helping them, And so what I'm suggesting is that a part of a family support program can be continuing to mobilize this mutual assistance. It's recognizing the families that are receiving services as resources to themselves, to other families, and to the programs. Okay, can I suggest some formats? Okay, well, Adrienne says, yes, for the families to become closer and start providing for each other. Exactly. And you do a lot of it with tenants union. And Pamela says, can you suggest some formats where families share information with each other other than cafes? Yes, thank you for asking that question. There's a lot of informal support groups that people have. I was talking about, if you work in your program to design and deliver events with parents, for the parents. If like you have a clothing day, a clothing exchange day, and the thing is that people bring the clothes that their kids have outgrown, and they also can avail themselves of the clothes that other people bring, that's an example. I've given the example during the pandemic, Yolande Trevino at and Pactel in California. They were receiving food from people because the organizations who were giving out food recognized that they had a distribution network, like they could get it out. But the way they got it out was that the fathers who were going to receive a box of food were there to pack the food for other people and actually deliver it with their cars. So it's like, that's an example of working with families to get in community, to get the community what it needs. And Tammy says community gardens and co-ops are another example, as well as group connections we host for families in our programs. Yes, we do free yard sales, clothing, household or items, toys, baby items, etc. Yes. Okay, now we're on this page. So what's the next question? The next question for all of you is, how can helping one family create positive change in the community? And I'm thinking of a specific answer, but I know, and that's always a bad idea. Like when you're trying to ask a question, you want to be able to have everybody be able to answer it in their own way. But I'm thinking of something specific. How does helping one family create positive change in the community? Helping others makes you feel good, Rebecca said. Totally. Because that one family can help their friends and families and neighbors by sharing resources and ideas. Ding, ding, ding. That's what I was thinking, Tammy. Makes them feel a part of the community. Yes, it's a chain reaction. Yes, word of mouth in the community. Totally. Like if you help one family, then that person's going to say, oh, this person was really helpful to me. And giving back once you're helped. Yes, people thank you so much, Adrian, for bringing that up, because what we've noticed, and I'm sure you noticed this in your work with families, is that once nobody likes being, or most people, I shouldn't say nobody, but most people don't like being the helpy. You know, we know this when we talk in cafes about, you know, the third protective factor, right? What is that? What is it?
Concrete
support in times of need, right? Yeah. So when we do concrete support in times of need, nobody likes being helped. They don't want to need. They want to be the helper. So somehow when a family gets to the place, or a parent gets to the place where their needs are enough to be able, that they feel a little bit filled up, they often want to be able to give back. Yes, no forms, no facing government paperwork to get help. And we did a webinar on this too, Rebecca, back in the day, about what comes first. You know, do you first get the help and then fill out the paperwork? You know, and trust that once you help the people, they will fill out they'll get your paperwork done with you? Or do you make them go sit down when they're suffering and go through the whole, you know, intake process to get all your needs met before you meet the needs of the people you serve? Adrienne has her hand raised. So let's unmute Adrienne and hear from you. You need to unmute yourself, Adrienne, because we can't hear you. Once you do that, you'll probably, yeah.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Perfect. So I had a divorce and I needed to rely on my community to help me because I was only one person. And I did need to move, and I got hit in the head with a box and it damaged my neck. And I was unable to move physically, couldn't lift anything. And so I had to make the phone call to my friend group and say, help me. And it was a really difficult situation for me because I was already in pain and suffering from all the other things happening in the situation. But they came to my aid and they helped me. And I told each and every person who came into my house and packed my things up that I would give back to the community when I was done. And they all, oh, you know, you will in your time, blah, blah, blah. So after time, I discovered that it was a good thing to do that. So I did. I started a Facebook group because I felt the tenor of the community was moving the wrong direction. And I started posting, you know, the joyful, prayerful, happy things in the morning. Not so much on the spiritual side, but just, you know, to encourage everyone. And it really became a big deal in the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And at that time, people were having problems. They were suffering. And I was able, through that group, to really help somebody in our community who had need and had reached out to me privately and said, you know, I'm not going to make it through this pandemic. We're going to end up not being able to pay our rent because we're paying for all these other things. And together as a community, everybody pitched in a little bit, and they pitched in a little bit extra of the things that she needed, and she was able to make it through her her COVID episode completely and heal, and the family is still in their housing. And I think that it wouldn't have happened without my community, because I alone did not have the resources to help her. And the community services only helps you after you go out on your rent. They don't help you before, when you know you're going to go out on your rent. So in many ways, we just stopped all of her stress and relieved all of her anxiety, because as a group together, we brought an entire car full of stuff.
Wow.
And yeah, it was amazing. And I'm just really, really happy that the community pulled together. It was from different kinds of people who've never had this experience before, to people who had suffered greatly. And I heard all of their stories and was able to thank them all for this person in our community who was suffering. And that really is what brought me here to the cafes, and understanding that we're on the cusp of a lot of homelessness and frustration with our communities here in America, and how vital the cafes and the networks are going to be in the next few years. So,
wow, thank you so much, Adrienne. Thank you for your personal story. Thank you for your vulnerability and openness and willingness to share with everyone. And that's aho. I appreciate you and appreciate that sentiment. And I want to speak also just to, in the interest of to Tammy, about, unfortunately, the grants often dictate that the paperwork needs to be completed first. And I always say this from, as a CEO, maybe it's in my interest, but I really strongly believe we need to have top down and bottom up, so we need to negotiate with the grant people and say, this is the way we want to do this. Can you let us try to do it this way? And this is why, and we feel, or we've been experimenting with this and this seems to work really well. We've gotten 100% of the paperwork done and actually gotten more, better information when we do it this way, because we've already established trust. Will you let us do that in this case? And I feel like it's up to all of us to advocate for what we think should be the practice. So the next question I have for all of you is, what is the relationship between consciously assisting families with building their networks of informal support and building parent leadership? Because both of those things are things that family serving organizations, say that they're committed to: family engagement, but also parent leadership or family leadership. So what's the relationship between consciously assisting families with building their networks of support and building parent leadership? Or to put it a different way, how do you think assisting families with building networks of support could contribute to parent leadership? Robyn, do you want to answer the question? Because just in the interest of time, I know we have a couple of
yeah, that's totally fine. So I really believe that in these informal networks of support, that there are leaders. And I believe that they're gaining skills and they're teaching the skills that they have. That's the reciprocity of mutual aid. You're coming for a need and you're giving back of what your time and your talents are. And by teaching the parents to do, to practice this reciprocity, they're building their innate leadership skills, and they often are lending them back then to the agency who led them to the mutual aid, which then there can be a much more formal process of building parent leadership.
Thank you, Robyn. So we have some answers in the chat. I don't want to cut you off, but I do
want
to answer the chat. So Adrienne says it builds strong leaders. Yes, building networks of support also builds strong leaders. And Tammy says when families build their own networks of support, they get a taste of advocating for themselves and their families, and possibly for those in their network. Once families feel that empowerment, they may want to do more. Yes, so that's where we are. And Andrew's reminding me that we're at 12:25. So I'm going to go to the next series of questions and kind of just leave you with we'll put these up here. So and this is kind of like a commercial for our training.
Mhm.
So how can we teach people to look for services in a participatory, collaborative way? And how do you accompany them to be able to access those services? So here, if you would come to the workshop, we go really deeply into not yes. Okay, let me say, typically when you do information and referral, there's a lot of emphasis placed on you developing your network of resources and resource providers, and then you using your connections to be able to get families into what they need. And I'm not saying that shouldn't happen, it should, but there's also another possibility, which is really asking a lot of empowering questions and using skills of motivational interviewing to find out what the parents think that they need, and then how they could find it. So it's kind of like, Adrian, you gave that example, like when you were in pain and needing to move, and calling your friends and saying, hey, I need help with packing, is a simple example of mobilizing an informal network of support. And if you had gone to a center and said, like, I'm moving, but a family support center, and said, I'm moving, how could the worker at the center have assisted you with figuring out what exactly you needed and who in your network could help you, and then where to look for others? So Tammy says, I agree, Adrian, warm handoff, introduction, and modeling. And then Adrian says, accompany them to access services is so important. And Adrian says, fear of the new happens. You feel vulnerable, but if you're there when they dial the phone and hand off, it really helps. And if you follow up to make sure that it actually happened, and to know what their experience was, and to counteract any of the barriers that they encountered. Okay.
I think that, can I just chime in here and just say, I think that when you accompany a family to do that, and you break down that fear and let them be successful, the opportunity for them to teach another family how to do that, or say, hey, I'm going to come with you, and I'm going to go with you to the service, exists. And I think that is where that reciprocity is coming in.
Yes, and I just want to say that Robyn Harvey has a huge wealth of experience in mobilizing informal support in the foster parent community through Facebook groups like Adrian's talking about, but also just through community, and a lot of experience of foster parents assisting each other. And one of her reasons she's so passionate about parent cafes with foster parents is because of that experience of, for more than a decade, trying to, assist people with sharing with each other.
Well, not only just teaching them to fish, but teaching them to teach others to fish, to teach others to fish.
Yeah.
I think that is really like just the crux of this whole mutual aid and community building. Cafes are a great place to do that, but there are others. This training will help you learn how to do some of those skills.
Or enhance the skills you already have. So
absolutely.
Let's Andrew? Great. So we are moving tomorrow. Robyn and I are going to again be together, and we're going to talk about past the referral stage, following up, and meaningful relationships, because it's relationships. It's all about the relationships. And then on Friday, we have the Taste of Parent Cafe. We all need help sometimes. And then next week, we're moving to human-centered child welfare. I'm on vacation next week, but
I'll be here.
Tiffany will be here, and we're going to really talk about human-centered child welfare.
I'm so super excited about next week.
Thank you, Tammy. And thank you, Robyn. Yes, I'm excited about next week too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure.
So online living the protective factors is August 26th and 27th. Do we have one of these coming up?
We just had one. It's today.
Oh.
Today and tomorrow.
Okay, but look on the, we're going to be unveiling a new website soon, and we will have all of our workshops, and we will be offering relationship-based practice and making effective referrals again. And we also can come to your place to do it if you need it, or your place virtually or in person. Thank you so much, Regina. Thank you everybody for being here. Enjoy your day. And
So nice to see you all. And we'll see you again tomorrow.